Ambassador Crixthon of the Valoran Empire stood on the observation deck of his warship, watching the blue planet rotate slowly beneath him. Earth, the humans called it. Such a small world, such fragile creatures living upon it. Ambassador, his tactical officer approached with a data tablet. Our scans confirm initial reports. The humans possess only basic space travel technology. Their fastest ships cannot exceed 0.3 light speed. Their weapons are primitive, chemical propellants and basic nuclear devices. Crixthan's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his species. The Valorans had conquered 47 worlds across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They had crushed civilizations 1,000 years older than humanity. This would be easy. And their military strength? He asked. Laughable, Ambassador. They fight among themselves constantly. Their world is divided into hundreds of small territories. They have no unified defense system, no planetary shields, no orbital weapons platforms. Crixthon turned back to the viewport. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light communication 15 years ago. They had made contact with the Galactic Council just 10 years past, and in that short time, they had done something that caught the Empire's attention. They had begun to trade, to negotiate, to make friends. The Valoran Empire did not appreciate competition. Send the message, Crixthon ordered. Tell them they have 12 standard hours to surrender unconditionally. Their world will become a vassal state of the Empire. Their people will serve us. The tactical officer bowed and left to carry out the command. Crixthon felt confident. He had studied the humans carefully. They were emotional creatures, driven by fear and self-preservation, like all prey species. When they saw his fleet of 300 warships, they would submit. They always did. 12 hours later, the human response arrived. It was 2 words. Come try. Crixthon stared at the message for a long moment. Then he laughed, a harsh, rattling sound that echoed through the command deck. Brave words from a doomed species. All ships, begin the invasion. The Valoran fleet descended upon Earth like a swarm of metal locusts. Their plasma cannons lit up the night sky over a dozen major cities. They expected panic. They expected chaos. They expected surrender. What they got was something else entirely. In Moscow, an old general named Viktor Petrov watched the alien ships approach on his tactical display. He had fought in 3 wars during his long career. He had seen enemies who seemed invincible. He had learned that nothing was truly invincible. Sir, his aide said, voice trembling, their weapons are destroying our air defenses. Our fighters cannot penetrate their shields. Victor nodded slowly. Then we don't attack their shields. We attack their confidence. He picked up a phone and made a call to an old friend in Washington. Similar calls were being made all around the world. Old enemies became allies in the span of minutes. Ancient grudges were set aside. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed on something. They would fight. The first wave of Valoran ground troops landed in the plains of Kansas, expecting to establish a beachhead from which to conquer the continent. 3,000 elite warriors in powered armor, armed with plasma rifles that could cut through tank armor like paper. They were met by farmer named James Cooper and his 17-year-old son, armed with hunting rifles and a determination that the aliens could not understand. You're on my land, James said simply, raising his weapon. The Valoran commander laughed through his helmet speakers. Foolish human! Your primitive weapon cannot harm us. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. James smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Son, did you hear that? They think we're alone. From every farmhouse, every barn, every truck hidden in the wheat fields, humans emerged. Hundreds of them, thousands. Not soldiers, farmers, mechanics, teachers, store clerks. Men and women who had never been in a military. but every single one of them carried a weapon. The Valorans had studied human military strength. They had counted armies and navies and air forces. What they had failed to understand was that in America alone, there were more privately owned guns than people, and the people who owned them knew how to use them. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Valoran ground force was annihilated. In Beijing, Commander Chen Wei-lin watched the alien dropships approaching her city of 23 million people. Her military forces had been largely destroyed in the initial bombardment. She had perhaps 2,000 soldiers left under her command. But she had something else. She had people. "Open the emergency channels," she ordered. "Tell everyone to come to the defense points. Bring whatever you can. Bring knives, bring hammers, bring stones." Her officers stared at her in disbelief. "Commander, they have plasma weapons. Our people have nothing." "Our people have everything," Wei-lin replied. "They have their homes, their families, their ancestors watching from beyond, and they have numbers the aliens cannot imagine." When the Valoran troops entered Beijing, they found the streets empty. They advanced cautiously, their scanners showing life signs everywhere but seeing no one. It was like walking through a ghost city. Then the first Valoran soldier fell, a kitchen knife buried in the gap between his helmet and chest plate. He never saw who threw it. The second soldier fell to a ceramic pot dropped from a 20th-story window, cracking his armor with the force of impact. The third soldier was pulled into a sewer opening by hands that seemed to come from nowhere. By nightfall, the Valoran force in Beijing had lost 300 soldiers without ever engaging in a proper battle. They controlled nothing. They held nothing. Every shadow hid an enemy. Every window was a threat. The aliens had expected an army. They found a population. On the Valoran command ship, Ambassador Crixthon was receiving reports from across the planet. None of them were good. "Sir, the Tokyo landing force reports 50% casualties. They're trapped in the subway systems." "Sir, the London assault has stalled. The humans have flooded the tunnels with river water." "Sir, our forces in Cairo have been completely surrounded. The humans are using mirrors to blind our soldiers and then attacking with hand weapons." Crixthon slammed his fist against the console. "This is impossible. They have no technology. They have no unified command. How are they coordinating?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A communication intercept from somewhere in South America. A human voice, speaking in a language the translator identified as Spanish. "They're in the plaza. Fernando's group, go left. Maria, take your people to the church roof. Remember, don't aim for the armor. Aim for the joints, the eyes, the soft places. They're bigger than us, but they're slow. They're stupid. And they're afraid." The voice laughed, and it was a sound that made Crixthon's blood run cold. "They thought they were the predators. They're about to learn what a real predator looks like." In his bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Nathan Brooks was meeting with the hastily assembled Council of World Leaders. The room was crowded with faces on screens. The Russian president, the Chinese premier, the British prime minister, the leaders of France, Germany, Brazil, India, and dozens of others. "We're holding them," General Morrison reported, "but we're taking heavy casualties. Their air superiority is absolute. We can't maintain this level of resistance for more than a few weeks." Nathan nodded. "Then we need to change the game. We can't beat them with conventional warfare, so we won't fight conventionally." He turned to a quiet man in the corner of the room, Dr. James Wright, the head of DARPA's Classified Research Division. "James, you told me 6 months ago that we had something special, something we weren't sure humanity was ready for. I think we're ready now." Dr. Wright stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly. "Sir, what we've developed, it's not a weapon exactly. It's more like an awakening. We found something in human DNA, something dormant, something that evolution gave us and then locked away because it was too dangerous." "Dangerous to whom?" the Russian president asked through his screen. To everything else in the universe, Dr. Wright replied. Sir, we've known for decades that humans have capabilities we don't fully understand. Soldiers who survive injuries that should kill them instantly. Mothers who lift cars off their children. People who sense danger before it arrives. We always explained these things away, but they're real. They're genetic. And we've figured out how to turn them on. Nathan looked at the doctor for a long moment. What happens when we turn them on? Sir, for the past 100,000 years, humanity has been fighting with one hand tied behind its back. We've been asleep at the wheel of our own biology. The aliens think they're fighting us at our full strength. He paused, a strange smile crossing his face. They have no idea what we're capable of. In orbit, Crixthon was preparing to order a second assault wave when his sensor officer suddenly went pale. Ambassador, we're detecting something strange on the planet's surface. Define strange. The humans, sir. Their biological signatures are changing. All of them. All around the planet. It's like they're... The officer's voice broke. It's like they're waking up. On the ground in Kansas, James Cooper felt something stirring in his chest. A warmth that spread through his limbs, sharpening his senses, making him feel more alive than he had ever felt before. He looked at his son and saw the same awakening in the boy's eyes. In Beijing, Wei Lin watched as her soldiers began to move differently, faster, stronger, their eyes gleaming with an inner light that had not been there before. In 1,000 cities across Earth, humanity began to remember what they truly were. Crixthon stared at the sensor readings in horror. What are they? His science officer was shaking. Sir, according to these readings, the humans are not the primitive species we thought. They are... He checked the data again, unable to believe it. Sir, their biological readings now match the profile of the architects. Silence fell across the command deck. The architects, the ancient race that had seeded life across the galaxy billions of years ago. The race that had created the stargates, the hyperlanes, everything that made galactic civilization possible. The race that had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only legends of their power. That's impossible, Crixthon whispered. The architects are extinct. Not extinct, sir, the science officer replied, his voice barely audible. Sleeping, and we just woke them up. On Earth, Nathan Brooks stepped out of his bunker and looked up at the alien fleet filling the sky. He felt the change coursing through his body, the strength, the awareness, the ancient knowledge bubbling up from somewhere deep in his genetic memory. He smiled. Humanity had been content to be weak, to struggle, to limit themselves. They had built civilization while handicapped by their own evolution. They had reached the stars while keeping their true nature locked away. But the Valorans had made a mistake. They had threatened humanity's children, their homes, their future. And in doing so, they had broken the lock. Nathan raised his hand toward the sky, and he felt something respond, something vast and powerful, sleeping in the quantum structure of the universe itself, the inheritance of the architects, the birthright of humanity. You wanted a war, he said quietly, knowing that somehow the aliens would hear him. Congratulations, you've got one. In orbit, every alarm on the Valoran fleet began screaming at once. Crixthon watched in helpless horror as the humans on the planet below began to rise, actually rise, floating into the air, surrounded by crackling energy that his sensors could not identify. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Millions. All ships, retreat, he screamed. Retreat! But it was too late. The first wave of ascended humans reached orbit in seconds, moving through the vacuum of space as easily as walking across a field. They did not need ships. They did not need weapons. They were the weapons. The first Valoran warship died silently, its hull crumpling like paper as a single human woman passed through it, her eyes blazing with golden light. The crew did not have time to scream. Crixthon stumbled backward as his ship shuddered under impossible forces. "What have we done?" he gasped. "What have we awakened?" The last thing he saw before his ship dissolved around him was a human face, calm, ancient, and utterly merciless. And a voice spoke directly into his mind, echoing with the weight of 1,000,000,000 years of sleeping power. "You came to conquer the children of the architects. You came to enslave the heirs of those who built the stars. You came thinking we were weak because we chose to be gentle." The voice paused, and in that pause, Crixthon felt the full weight of his species' mistake. "You should have let us sleep." Across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, alien civilizations watched their communication networks light up with emergency broadcasts from the Valoran fleet. They watched 300 warships, the pride of the most powerful empire in known space, dissolve into atoms in less than 7 minutes. They watched humanity rise, and for the first time in galactic history, the universe learned the meaning of true fear. The Galactic Council had not convened in emergency session for over 3,000 years. The last time had been during the Kreth Plague, when an entire spiral arm had nearly been sterilized. But this was different. This was worse. High Counselor Verath, ancient leader of the Mindari Collective, looked around the vast chamber at the representatives of 700 civilizations. Every face, whether scaled, furred, or crystalline, wore the same expression of barely controlled terror. "You have all seen the recordings," Verath said, her mental voice echoing in every mind present. "The Valoran fleet is gone. 300 warships destroyed in 7 of their minutes. The humans did not use weapons, they used themselves." Representative Gorthan of the Crix Dominion stood, his massive form trembling despite his warrior breeding. "We must strike now, while they are still awakening. If we combine our fleets—" "You saw what they did to 300 ships," interrupted Ambassador Yuleth of the Sethrani, her voice sharp with fear. "How many ships would satisfy you? 3,000? 30,000? There are 8 billion of them, Gorthan. If even a fraction of them can do what we witnessed—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. In a quiet corner of the chamber, an ancient being watched the chaos with something approaching amusement. Keeper Jalven was the oldest member of the council, representative of the Watchers, a species so old that they remembered the time before the Stargates. He had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a cosmic ocean, and he had been waiting for this day for a very long time. "Counselors," he said, and though his voice was soft, it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. The arguing stopped. When a Watcher spoke, others listened. "You debate how to fight the humans, but you do not ask the important question. You do not ask why they were sleeping in the first place." Silence fell across the assembly. "The architects did not disappear," Jalven continued, rising slowly from his seat. "They evolved. They transcended physical form. But before they left, they seeded worlds across the galaxy with their genetic legacy. Most of those seeds failed. But one took root on a small blue world at the edge of an unremarkable spiral arm." "Earth," Verath whispered. "Yes. The architects knew that one day their children would awaken. They also knew that when they did, the children would need to prove themselves worthy of their inheritance, so they built in a lock, a genetic restraint that would keep the humans limited, struggling, forced to grow through adversity rather than power." Gorthan's voice was barely audible. "And the lock could only be broken by threat, by danger, by facing extinction and choosing to fight rather than surrender." Jalven's ancient eyes gleamed. "The Valorans did not attack a primitive species. They delivered the key to humanity's prison, and now the prisoners are free. On Earth, 3 weeks had passed since the awakening. The world had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Sarah Chen had been a high school science teacher in suburban Ohio before the change. Now she floated 3 feet above the ground, golden energy crackling between her fingers as she practiced shaping force fields around the remains of a Valoran dropship. "How does it feel?" asked Dr. Wright, who had become something of a celebrity since the awakening. He was documenting everything, trying to understand the science behind humanity's transformation. "It feels like I've been wearing heavy gloves my whole life," Sarah replied, "and someone finally took them off. Like I can finally feel the texture of reality." She laughed, and sparks of light danced in the air around her. "Is that strange to say?" "Nothing is strange anymore," Wright replied. He made a note on his tablet. "We're seeing the same pattern everywhere. The abilities vary. Some people have telekinesis, others telepathy, others can manipulate energy directly, but everyone reports the same sensation. Like waking from a dream." Sarah lowered herself to the ground, her expression growing serious. "Dr. Wright, I was a teacher. I taught kids about photosynthesis and cell division. Now I can reshape matter with my mind. What are we supposed to do with this? What are we supposed to become?" It was a question that humanity was asking itself everywhere. In Beijing, Commander Wei Lin had been promoted to general and given command of Earth's newly formed Ascended Defense Force. Her office overlooked the city that she had defended with kitchen knives and desperate courage. Now, her soldiers could level buildings with a thought. "General," her aide announced, "the delegation from the Galactic Council has arrived." Wei Lin straightened her uniform and composed her thoughts. The council had sent representatives to negotiate, a clear sign that they were afraid. Good. Fear could be useful. The delegation consisted of 3 beings, Keeper Zhal Ven, Ambassador Yuleth, and a Mindari diplomat named Sarath. They entered Wei Lin's office with careful, measured steps, as if walking into a predator's den. "Welcome to Earth," Wei Lin said, her voice neutral. "Please, sit." They sat. "You've come to negotiate," Wei Lin continued. "Let me save us all some time. What do you want, and what are you willing to offer?" Yuleth's scales rippled with discomfort at the direct approach. "General, the Council wishes to express its deepest regrets regarding the Valoran aggression. The Empire acted without Council sanction. Their actions do not represent—" "The Council did nothing to stop them," Wei Lin interrupted. "You knew they were coming. Your intelligence networks are extensive. You watched 300 warships approach a planet of people you considered primitives, and you did nothing." Her eyes hardened. "That makes you complicit." Sarath, the Mindari, leaned forward. "General, please understand our position. The Valoran Empire was the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We could not have stopped them even if we had wanted to. And now they're gone. Erased from existence in 7 minutes. Wei Lin smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "Tell me, Ambassador, what does that make us?" Zhal Ven, who had been silent until now, made a soft sound that might have been laughter. "Honest, direct, unwilling to play games, you are indeed your ancestors' children." Wei Lin's attention shifted to the ancient being. "You knew. Before any of this happened, you knew what we were." "I suspected. I hoped." Jalvin's eyes seemed to look through her, into something vast and distant. "The architects were not perfect beings, General. They were brilliant, powerful, and deeply flawed. They made mistakes. Some of those mistakes are still out there, waiting in the darkness between stars. The galaxy has needed protectors for a very long time. We have needed you." "What kind of mistakes?" Wei Lin asked, her voice softening slightly. "There are things in the universe that the architects created and then could not control. Experiments that went wrong. Weapons that developed minds of their own. The galaxy has spent millions of years hiding from these horrors, building civilizations in the shadows, hoping that the old nightmares would never wake. Jalvin paused. But they are waking now. They have sensed your awakening, and they are drawn to power like moths to flame. Wei Lin processed this information quickly. You didn't come here just to apologize for the Valorans. You came here to ask for our help. Yes. Against what? Jalvin reached into his robes and produced a small crystal. He placed it on the desk, and it projected an image that made Wei Lin's blood run cold. It was a creature, if it could be called that, a mass of impossible angles and writhing shadows, larger than a planet, moving through space with deliberate, hungry purpose. The architects called them the Devourers, Jalvin said. They were created as living weapons, designed to consume enemy civilizations, but they could not be controlled. They turned on their creators. The architects spent 1,000,000 years hunting them down, destroying them one by one. They believed they had killed them all. They were wrong, Wei Lin guessed. They were wrong. 5 Devourers survived, hidden in the void between galaxies, dormant and dreaming. When your species awakened, when the architect energy blazed across the cosmos for the first time in 1,000,000,000 years, they felt it. They are coming, and they are hungry. Wei Lin stared at the image for a long moment. Then she reached for her communication device. Get me President Brooks, and the Joint Chiefs, all of them, now. The news spread across Earth in hours. Humanity had barely begun to understand its new abilities, and already a greater threat loomed on the horizon. But something strange happened in response to the news. Something that the alien observers found deeply unsettling. Humans did not panic. In Tokyo, a young man named Kenji Tanaka heard the broadcasts about the Devourers while training with other newly awakened individuals in Yoyogi Park. He stopped his exercises and looked up at the sky, where construction crews were already building humanity's first true starships. Vessels designed to be crewed by beings who could survive in vacuum and channel cosmic energy. So there are monsters coming, Kenji said to his training partner, a former office worker named Yuki. Big ones. Yuki nodded, her eyes glowing faintly with suppressed power. The biggest anyone has ever seen, apparently. Kenji smiled. Good. I was worried this was going to be boring. The same attitude manifested everywhere. In London, veterans of the brief Valoran War gathered in pubs to discuss strategy for fighting planet-sized enemies. In Cairo, scholars who had spent their lives studying ancient mythology suddenly found that their expertise was relevant. They began comparing the Devourers to the chaos monsters of legend, looking for weaknesses in the old stories. In Buenos Aires, a grandmother named Elena Martinez stood before a crowd of thousands, her voice amplified by power that crackled in the air around her. They think we are new to this, she declared. They think we are children who just discovered fire, but look at our history. Look at what we survived before we had power. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived wars that killed millions. We survived ourselves, our worst impulses, our darkest hours. We clawed our way to the stars when we were blind and deaf and weak. Now we can see. Now we can hear. Now we are strong. She raised her fist, and lightning danced between her fingers. Let the monsters come. Let them see what happens when they threaten the children of Earth. The crowd roared in response, and across the planet, billions of voices joined them. In the council chamber, the alien representatives watched the broadcasts from Earth with growing amazement. They should be terrified, Eulith whispered. The Devourers destroyed civilizations that had millennia to prepare. These humans have had weeks. Why are they not afraid? Jalvin smiled, an expression that looked strange on his ancient features. Because fear is not in their nature, Ambassador. The architects designed them this way. They knew that their children would face threats that would break lesser beings, so they gave humanity something that no other species possesses. What? The inability to accept defeat. Other species, when faced with overwhelming odds, will calculate their chances and surrender or flee. Humans. Humans do not work that way. The more impossible the odds, the harder they fight. It is not rational. It is not logical. It is magnificent. 2 months after the awakening, humanity launched its first fleet of Ascendant-class vessels. They were not ships in the traditional sense. They had no engines, no weapons, no life support systems. They were simply platforms, carrying thousands of awakened humans into the void. General Wei Lin commanded the lead vessel, standing on an open deck that faced the stars. Behind her, her crew floated in formation, their bodies surrounded by shimmering fields of protective energy. "All vessels report ready, General," her second-in-command reported telepathically. "We are prepared to jump." Wei Lin nodded. The Council had provided coordinates for the approaching Devourer, still 3 months away at its current speed, but close enough that its shadow was already making entire civilizations flee in terror. "You know the plan," Wei Lin broadcast to the fleet. "We hit it hard, we learn its weaknesses, and we come back with what we've learned. No heroics. We need intelligence more than we need martyrs." Acknowledgements rippled through the mental link. Wei Lin took a deep breath. 3 months ago, she had been defending Beijing with improvised weapons and desperate courage. Now she was leading humanity's first offensive against a cosmic horror that had destroyed countless civilizations. She smiled. Life was strange. "All vessels, execute jump." Space folded around them and 10,000 humans vanished into the void. The Devourer called itself nothing, because it had no need for names. It simply was, a hunger given form, a void that consumed and grew and consumed again. It had slept for eons, dreaming of meals it had eaten in ages past. Now it was awake, drawn by the blazing beacon of architect energy that had suddenly appeared in a previously quiet sector of space. The energy signature was small, coming from a single tiny world, but it was unmistakably genuine. Architect power. After all this time, the Devourer would consume it, would add that power to its own, would grow strong enough to find the others of its kind, and together they would finish what they had started so long ago. It sensed the approaching ships with mild curiosity. So small, so insignificant. Prey, coming to meet predator. It opened what passed for its perception, prepared to study these morsels before consuming them. And for the first time in its ancient existence, the Devourer felt something unexpected. Fear. The beings on those ships were not the sleeping architects it remembered. They were something new, something that burned with the same power, but was wrapped in flesh and fury and an emotion the Devourer had never encountered before. They were excited. They were eager. They were looking forward to this fight. General Wei Lin saw the Devourer and felt her crew's emotions surge through the telepathic link. Horror. Yes. The thing was massive, bigger than any single object she had ever imagined. Its form constantly shifted, defying geometry, making her eyes water and her mind ache. But beneath the horror, she felt something else. Something primal and powerful. Anticipation. "Remember what you are," she broadcast to her fleet. "Remember what our ancestors did. They hunted mammoths with sticks. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They walked on the moon with technology less powerful than a modern phone. We are their children, and we are so much more." She raised her hand, and power blazed around her. Golden light that came from somewhere deep inside, from genetic memory and cosmic inheritance, and the simple, stubborn human refusal to surrender. "All ships," she commanded, her voice steady. "Engage the enemy!" 10,000 humans screamed forward into the void, and the Devourer learned what it meant to be prey. The battle lasted 7 hours. 7 hours of cosmic violence on a scale that the galaxy had never witnessed. The Devourer, this ancient horror that had consumed civilizations, that had broken the greatest empires in history, that had killed architects themselves, found itself faced with something it had never encountered, an enemy that fought back with joy. General Wei Lin led the assault from the front, her body wrapped in blazing golden energy as she carved channels through the creature's shadowy flesh. Every wound closed within seconds, but every wound also revealed information: how the Devourer healed, how it moved, where its attention focused when attacked. "Sector teams, cycle through," she commanded through the telepathic link. "Don't let it adapt to any single pattern." Humanity's fleet moved like a swarm of furious wasps, stinging from every direction. They learned that the Devourer was not truly one creature, but a collective, billions of smaller entities bound together by a central intelligence. They learned that its healing required energy, and that energy had to come from somewhere. They learned that if you hit it hard enough, fast enough, in enough places at once, you could actually make it feel pain. Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka discovered this last fact personally when he drove his fist through a particularly dense mass of shadow flesh and felt the entire creature shudder. "It screamed!" he broadcast excitedly. "Did anyone else hear that? It actually screamed." "Confirmed," replied Dr. Wright, who was monitoring the battle from a safe distance, recording everything for analysis. "The Devourer just broadcast on every frequency we can detect. It was not a pleasant sound." "It can feel pain," Wei Lin concluded. "That means it can be hurt. And if it can be hurt, it can be killed. All ships, fall back to Rally Point Alpha. We have what we came for." The retreat was orderly and professional. The Devourer tried to pursue, but found that it could not move as fast as humans who could fold space around themselves. It roared its frustration into the void, and the sound echoed across 1,000 light-years. On 100 worlds, terrified civilizations heard that roar and knew that something had changed. The Devourer, unstoppable, inevitable, the death of worlds, had been wounded, and it was angry. President Brooks received Wei Lin's report in his office, surrounded by advisors both human and alien. The Council had sent observers to Earth, and they watched the debriefing with expressions that ranged from disbelief to something approaching hope. "It can be killed," Wei Lin confirmed. "But not easily. Our current awakened population can hurt it, slow it down, maybe even drive it away. But to destroy it completely, we need more power. We need every human on Earth fully awakened and trained." "How long will that take?" Brooks asked. "Months. Maybe longer. The awakening process varies from person to person. Some people adapted within hours. Others are still struggling to manifest basic abilities." Keeper Jalven spoke from his place in the corner of the room. "There may be another way." "The architects left caches of their technology hidden throughout the galaxy. Tools designed for their own use, powered by the same energy that flows through your species. If you could find and activate these caches, they would amplify your abilities significantly." "Where are these caches?" Brooks asked. "I can provide coordinates for 7 locations. There are certainly more, but these are the only ones the Watchers have confirmed." Jalven paused. "I should warn you, the caches are protected. The architects did not want their tools falling into unprepared hands. There will be trials, tests. Some of your people may not survive." Wei Lin met the ancient being's eyes steadily. "Tell us where to go." The first cache was located deep within an ancient nebula, hidden inside a structure that defied conventional physics. Captain Marcus Stone led the expedition, a team of 50 awakened humans, chosen for their stability and control. They found the cache guarded by constructs of pure energy, semi-intelligent defense systems that had been waiting for billions of years for someone worthy to arrive. The constructs tested the humans not just with force, but with puzzles, moral dilemmas, and questions that probed the deepest parts of their souls. "Why do you seek power?" the construct asked Marcus directly, its form shifting through 1,000 configurations as it spoke. Marcus considered the question carefully. "Because something is coming that will destroy everything we love, our world, our families, our future. We need the power to protect them. Many have sought power for protection. They always fall to the same temptation. Power becomes its own purpose. Protection becomes domination. You would be no different." "Maybe," Marcus admitted. "Maybe we would become tyrants. Maybe we would become worse than the things we fight. But my daughter is 12 years old. She wants to be a marine biologist. She has a poster of dolphins on her wall, and she cries when she watches videos of beached whales being rescued. If there is even a chance, even the smallest possibility, that I can keep her safe long enough to grow up and save those whales, then I will take that chance. I will face that risk. I will be the monster if I have to be, so that she never has to be." The construct was silent for a long moment. Then it stepped aside. "Pass, child of the architects. Your heart is true enough. For now." Behind the construct lay a chamber of impossible beauty, crystalline structures that sang with contained power, devices that human science could not begin to understand, and at the center, a pedestal holding what looked like a simple metal band. "The crown of focusing," Jalvin's voice spoke in Marcus's mind through their communication link. "It amplifies and directs architect energy. A single human wearing it could channel the power of thousands." Marcus reached out and took the band. The moment it touched his skin, the universe changed. Over the following weeks, humanity retrieved 6 of the 7 caches. Each presented different challenges, some physical, some mental, some spiritual. Not everyone who entered survived, but those who did emerged transformed, carrying artifacts of immense power and new understanding of what the architects had truly been. The 7th cache proved impossible to access. It was located in the heart of a star, and even humanity's awakened could not survive those temperatures. But 6 caches were enough. They would have to be. The Devourer had not been idle during these weeks. It had consumed 2 uninhabited moons and a small planetoid, replenishing its energy and growing larger. Worse, the Galactic Council reported that the other 4 Devourers had changed course. They were converging, drawn by their siblings' distress call. In 3 months, all 5 would arrive at the same location. If they merged, the Council's scientists calculated, the combined entity would be unstoppable by any known force in the universe. Humanity had 3 months to prepare for a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Training camps sprang up on every continent. Awakened humans taught those still learning to control their abilities. The architect artifacts were studied, their functions mapped and understood. Military strategists developed tactics for fighting entities that existed partially outside normal space, and the people of Earth continued to astonish their alien observers. "They are not building bunkers," Ambassador Uleth reported to the Council in disbelief. "They are not preparing evacuation routes. They are building monuments." It was true. In cities around the world, humans were erecting statues and murals commemorating the coming battle, not as a memorial to the dead, but as a celebration of the living. Artists painted massive images of humans standing defiant against cosmic horrors. Musicians composed symphonies inspired by the rhythm of combat. Writers created stories where humanity triumphed, sharing them across networks that reached billions. "They are already celebrating their victory," Eulith continued. "The battle has not even begun, and they act as if they have already won." Jalven watched the broadcasts from Earth with ancient, knowing eyes. "They are not celebrating victory, Ambassador. They are building faith. They are creating a story in which they win, and then they are making that story true through sheer force of will. It is how they have always conquered their challenges. They imagine what they want, believe it is possible, and then refuse to stop until it becomes real. That is not how reality works. For humans, it is. That is why the architects chose them." The day of the final battle arrived with deceptive calm. Earth's population, now 94% awakened, gathered in meditation centers around the globe, linking their minds through a network of telepathic bonds. They would fight as one organism, billions of individuals acting with a single purpose. General Wei Lin stood at the head of the assault fleet, now numbering over 1 million combat-ready humans. Each wore simple uniforms marked with their home nations and personal insignia, but all carried the same expression: determination without fear. "This is it," she broadcast to the fleet and to the billions watching from Earth. "Everything we are, everything we could become, depends on what happens in the next few hours. The Devourers are coming. They believe they are the most powerful forces in the universe. They are about to learn otherwise." She paused, feeling the emotions of her species wash through the telepathic link. Pride, love, fury, hope. All of it blending together into something that transcended any single emotion. "Our ancestors looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. They built rockets with the technology of their age, knowing that they might die, hoping that their children would go farther. We are those children, and we have gone farther than they ever imagined. Now we will fight for the right to go farther still." She raised the crown of focusing, and it blazed with light that could be seen from orbit. "For Earth, for humanity, for the stars that are our birthright, forward!" The fleet jumped. They emerged into space that was already chaos. The 5 Devourers had nearly completed their merger, forming a mass of writhing darkness larger than Jupiter. Their combined hunger radiated outward like a black sun, drawing in matter and energy and hope itself. The humans hit them before the merger was complete. Wei Lin led the first strike, channeling the power of billions through the crown. A beam of pure architect energy lanced across space and struck the junction point where the 5 Devourers connected. The creatures screamed, a sound that killed unprotected listeners across 3 star systems, and separated slightly. Their merger interrupted. "Now!" Wei Lin commanded. "Hit them while they're split!" Humanity swarmed the wounded gods. Captain Marcus Stone and his team drove into the largest Devourer, carrying 3 of the retrieved artifacts. They used the Blade of Division to carve channels through its flesh, the Shield of Binding to prevent those channels from healing, and the Prism of Revelation to expose the creature's central consciousness. "I see it!" Marcus broadcast. "The core! It's like a twisted brain made of screaming light." "Destroy it," Wei Lin ordered. "Whatever it takes." Marcus looked at his team. Good people, brave people. Some had children waiting at home. Others had left behind dreams they still hoped to fulfill. All of them knew what needed to be done. "It's been an honor," he said simply. "The honor was ours, Captain." They dove into the heart of the Devourer. The explosion that followed was visible on Earth, a flash of gold and white that lit up the night sky. One Devourer, the first of 5, dissolved into cosmic dust, its component entities scattering across the void. Marcus Stone and his team were gone, but they had shown that the ancient horrors could be killed. The battle raged for hours that felt like years. Humanity lost people, thousands, then tens of thousands. But they held the line. They pushed back. They made the Devourers bleed. Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka fell defending a wounded comrade, buying time for evacuation with his own body. Elena Martinez, the grandmother from Buenos Aires, sacrificed herself to destroy the second Devourer's core, her final words a prayer for her grandchildren. Dr. Wright died recording data that would later prove essential for understanding how to prevent the creatures from regenerating. They died, but they died winning. When the last Devourer finally collapsed, torn apart by a coordinated assault of 700,000 humans acting in perfect synchronization, the silence that followed was profound. Wei Lin floated in space, surrounded by debris and dust and the fading echoes of ancient horror. Her body ached. Her mind was exhausted. Half her fleet was gone, their lives sacrificed in the greatest battle the galaxy had ever witnessed. They had won. She barely had the strength to form words, but she forced herself to speak. The universe needed to hear this. History needed to record this moment. Devourers destroyed. Earth stands. Humanity victorious. The message propagated across the communication networks at light speed, reaching every corner of the galaxy within hours. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives in fear of the ancient nightmares learned that the nightmares were gone. That humanity, the strange young species from the quiet world at the edge of the spiral arm, had done what no civilization had ever managed. They had saved everyone. Months later, Earth hosted the first Galactic Unity Summit, a gathering of representatives from every known civilization, meeting to discuss the new reality that humanity's victory had created. General Wei Lin, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, stood before the assembly with the surviving members of her fleet behind her. They wore their medals and their scars with equal pride. "We did not ask for this power," Wei Lin said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "We did not seek this responsibility, but it was given to us, and we will not waste it. The architects built us to be protectors, and that is what we will be. Not conquerors, not rulers, guardians." She looked at the assembled aliens, species who had feared humanity, who had considered exterminating them in their sleep, who now looked at them with something approaching reverence. "We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will stand against the darkness wherever it rises. We will honor the memory of those who fell to give us this victory, and we will build a galaxy worthy of their sacrifice." High Counselor Verath rose and bowed, a gesture of respect that the Mindari had not shown to any other species in recorded history. The Council recognizes Earth's new status. "We welcome humanity as the shield of the galaxy, inheritors of the architect legacy, protectors of all life." The chamber erupted in approval. Later, as the celebration wound down, Wei Lin found herself standing alone on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The stars above were bright, and she could feel them now. Not just see them, but feel them, each one a furnace of light and heat and possibility. "Heavy thoughts, General?" She turned to find Keeper Jalven approaching. The ancient watcher moved slowly, but his eyes were bright with something she had not seen before. Hope, perhaps, or satisfaction. "I'm thinking about what comes next," Wei Lin admitted. "We killed the Devourers, but the architects made other mistakes, other experiments. There will be more threats. Almost certainly. And we'll fight them. We'll keep fighting until the galaxy is safe." Jalven nodded. "That is your nature. That is why you were created. The architects knew that the universe would always produce new horrors. They needed children who would never stop fighting, never give up, never accept defeat." He paused. They needed humans. Wei Lin was quiet for a moment. "Before the awakening, I was a military officer in a country of 1.4 billion people. I worried about politics and budgets and career advancement. I complained about traffic. I argued with my sister about who would host family dinners." She smiled faintly. "Now I command a fleet that fights cosmic nightmares. I speak directly to the minds of billions. I carry artifacts that could reshape planets. Do you miss the old life? Sometimes, but I wouldn't trade this for anything. We were sleeping, Keeper. All of us. For our entire history. We built civilizations and crossed oceans and walked on moons, but we were still asleep. Now we're awake. She looked up at the stars. Now we can finally see what we were always meant to become. Across the galaxy, humanity spread out like seeds on a cosmic wind. They established stations in deep space, monitoring for new threats. They built academies where the young could learn to control their abilities. They created art and music and literature that celebrated their new existence while honoring their humble origins. They became what the architects had always intended: protectors, guardians, the shield that stood between the innocent and the dark. And on a small blue world at the edge of an unremarkable spiral arm in a farmhouse in Kansas, an old man named James Cooper sat on his porch and watched his grandchildren playing in the wheat fields. They floated above the crops, laughing as they chased each other through air that had once been humanity's prison. James smiled. Somewhere out in the universe, the Valoran ambassador who had started all this, Crixthon, whose demand for surrender had awakened humanity's true nature, had been survived by a few of his species. The Valoran remnant had fled to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, terrified and diminished, living in constant fear of the beings they had foolishly threatened. History would remember them only as a footnote, the species that had made the worst mistake in galactic history, the empire that had poked the sleeping giant and learned, too late, what it truly was. Well done, the universe seemed to whisper. You've just started a war with the universe's deadliest species, and humanity had won. James Cooper raised his glass of lemonade to the sky, to his grandchildren, to the stars that now belonged to his people. To the future, he said softly. May we always be worthy of it. His grandchildren floated down to join him, their eyes bright with the golden light of awakened power, and together they watched the sunset paint the Kansas sky in colors that seemed somehow more beautiful than they had ever been before. The first chapter of humanity's cosmic story had ended, but the greatest adventures were only beginning.